All right. Well, welcome to the today's presser as we are on the next day following the budget presentation, and we wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to answer some questions regarding the budget. Last night, just for summary's sake, I'll give you kind of the Cliff Notes version of what I shared with the City Council, but we have a total budget projected for 2024 of $261,314,085. With just under $100,000 going towards the general fund, which is really what pays for the day-to-day operations. And then we also have enterprise funds, which are standalone entities such as the airport and the monument and water, et cetera, that function as kind of their own unit. And so pretty significant deal. We also said that our capital improvement projects budgets for the next 5 years projected currently at $134,435,056. Now that's the infrastructure budget, the government buildings, things of that nature. So we have a lot of big things going on in Rapid City. So out of that budget, we kind of get an idea of what we have to work with. And I set out last night with some priorities, and members of the press, if you didn't receive a booklet, we have some updated booklets here. We continue to make some small revisions on grammar and styling and those sorts of things, but we want to make sure that we will have that out to the public in a PDF format here shortly, as well as available to you as well. So last night I laid out some priorities and talked a little bit about some of our opportunities and some of our challenges. And one of the things I talked about was the city's reliance upon sales tax. So the citizens pay 6.2% sales tax when they buy items. 4.2% of that goes to 4.2 cents of that goes towards the state of South Dakota, and Rapid City has 2 cents of that sales tax. 1 cent goes to pay for the general fund. That's things like police and finance and IT and these kinds of departments that we have to run the city. The other cent is split between 42% going to the Vision Fund, 58% going to CIP, or Capital Improvement Projects. That's where our infrastructure budget resides. So because of this dependence upon sales tax, we rise and fall based on consumer spending a great deal. We have other revenue sources as well, but that's the major one. And so one of the things we are heavily dependent upon is people spending money in the city limits of Rapid City. And so one of the things we're going to go after as a priority, and I've talked to our economic development partners, is high volume retail. So you'll see a greater emphasis on that, a lot of discussion on that, because those are the kind of conversations that we're having, and we welcome them. And so as those high volume retailers, and when you think of high volume, you're thinking of big boxes, grocery stores, those sorts of things. We want to invite them into the city limits of Rapid City because we want to make sure that this entire region that we serve for 250 plus miles, that we remain the retail hub, that the shopping experience in Rapid City is better than anywhere else between us and Cheyenne and Sioux Falls. It's us. And so we want to be that destination. And that's going to be big because that's what provides revenue to the city so that we can provide functions like public service to the community, which public service and public safety is front and center in this budget. The significant, increases that we've had have a lot to do in revenues, has a lot to do with strong revenues, but the story of this budget is that the revenues are strong and so are expenses. That's just like every other family in Rapid City, where maybe you have a few extra bucks that you're making now because you're worth it and you're getting paid for it, but your gas has also gone up, your insurance has gone up, your health insurance premiums have gone up, groceries have gone up. The city experiences the same thing with just a lot more zeros. So that's the reality of this year's budget, and we certainly have a lot of work to do. A few other things I noted last night with going back to public safety was a few things that we are introducing as part of this budget. One is the City Park Ranger program. We've talked about that recently in the community, just kind of educating folks about what that's going to entail if it's approved by the City Council. We're going to start small with 4 FTEs. That's full-time equivalency for employees, if you don't know what that means, and offer training and equipment and gear for them to do their jobs well. The other thing we're going to do is propose $150,000 for 2 years for the Ignite program. That's a partnership with the Pennington County Sheriff's Department. It's a community work program that I think really has a lot of potential. And we have made some investments in homelessness. And I talked about this last night, bears repeating, that we do want it to be harder to be homeless in Rapid City. We mean that in a couple of ways. For starters, that if you want services, Rapid City has an enormous amount of services available to you. For starters, for those who are down on their luck and really want to get out of homelessness, really want an organization to help them out, the Cornerstone Rescue Mission is there for them. And we are recommending $200,000 towards the Cornerstone Rescue Mission because essentially they are the only emergency shelter that we have in Rapid City. They also are the only food option that serves 365 days a year, 7 days a week, lunch and dinner. There's a lot of meal options for folks in the city, but they're the only ones that are every day, multiple times a day, rain or shine, you can always count on them. And so because of that, we've made that a priority. We also have a significant investment with the CARE Campus. That's our partnership with Pennington County. That's over $1.3 million that goes to provide help and detox to those who might suffer from substance abuse issues or mental health conditions. So that is an ongoing partnership that we have with the county. So just to say that if wherever you're at on the spectrum, if you're struggling with difficulties, the CARE Campus is an option. In the community, the Cornerstone is an option for you as well. There are also long-term options such as One Heart, and then various groups that kind of fill in gaps along the way. So the fact of the matter is the community of Rapid City, not just the city government, the community of Rapid City does a lot to serve our homeless population. And so there is no reason anyone should ever be sleeping on the streets, because the other part of being harder to be homeless is that we do not want to allow people to sleep on the streets or in our public spaces. And that is for the safety of all, because it's not safe for those who do sleep in those spaces. Instead, we'd rather they go to where there's shelter, and there is shelter in Rapid City. So the police department police chief indicates that we have 11 FTEs dedicated to serving the homeless population. That does not include 3 that are serviced by grants. That would bring that total higher. That's the direct costs. We have other indirect costs. Our fire department also deals with these challenges, not only addressing the needs in the community, but often they are not paid back for their services as a result of this growing issue. And all of that impacts our budgets. And so it's important to point that out, just have to be honest with everybody about that. But I mentioned that last night, and I know that's a big part of the conversation. So all in all, we have a lot of great things in store for this next year. I'm really excited for the city of Rapid City. It is funny to come in the 9th inning of the budget process, but we were able to tweak it. We were able to make it all balance and match up and make sure that it matches the priorities that the people elected me for. And what I have here with me today are the department directors. And last night in the budget presentation, I talked a lot about big picture stuff for the city, but this is a great opportunity because within this booklet, we created a 50-page booklet for Rapid City citizens. We've never done this before, but it was a way to make sure we brought clarity and say, here's where your taxpayer funds are going. And each of the departments have developed goals and information, as well as the financial data that runs their departments. And so I have those experts here today. They are the best persons to speak on that. Last night, because of time, wasn't able to walk through every department, but I did want to give the media and the public the opportunity, if they had questions regarding specific departments or objectives that we had the experts all in the room at the same time to answer those questions. So with that, I would open it up to any questions that you may have. I will remind you, we are streaming this live on our platforms as well. So to help everybody, would you mind going to the podium so that we can have an active microphone and ask your question to me or any of the department heads that are up here today? Would it be helpful, by the way, before we do that, that we share who these people are up here? Would that be great? Okay. So right over here, we have Jim Gilbert. He's the director of IT. Next to him, we have Dale Tech, the director of Public Works. Behind them, on the far left, Jeff Beegler, the director of Parks and Recreation. We have Terry Davis, the director of our library services. Vicki Fisher next to her. She's director of our community planning and development, or community development. Patrick Dame, he is the airport director. Don Hedrick, he is the chief of police. Craig Balzer, he's the director of the monument. Might have some questions about that too. We had a great presentation last night on the economic impact of the monument, so it'd be a good topic for you. Leah Braun, she is our interim human resources director. Chief Culberson, Jason Culberson right here in the white, he's our fire chief. And Daniel Ainsley, he's the director of finance. Let me tell you, he's been a rock star in this budget process as well. He's newer to the city, but he's done an excellent job and was a real big help with this and a great resource if you have questions regarding the numbers. So with that, anybody who wants to go first? Darsha with the Rapid City Journal.
I've got a few here. So.
All right.
Mayor Solomon, I'd like to start with your comments last night about approving positions that were authorized last year. You said you would not be approving most, or I think you said a few of those. Can you tell us in detail which positions you're referring to?
Well, we have positions last year that were authorized that we will look at filling those. And so there are a slew of positions that were authorized in the 2023 budget. Not really messing with those. As always, before you hire anything, you want to evaluate whether you need it or not. That's all positions. That's any position in the city. So there are positions already authorized, and I'll talk about one in a moment. For 2024, these folks, they have a lot of needs, and they did request positions that I said no to, and the previous mayor did as well, by the way. The only positions I authorized are for the City Park Ranger program and the Internet Crimes Against Children unit. I got some data, and I've known about this for a while, that over the last 4 years, the caseload for Internet Crimes Against Children has gone up 81%. And I made it a point that, you know what, that's a significant need, and we are part of a unit, a joint unit, tackling that issue. This is child pornography, child assault. When they hear about something, I mean, there's some disgusting, vile things. I really don't like to talk about it. Except it makes me mad, and it makes me put it in the budget and say we're going to go after you if you are preying upon children. So I actually made an exception to no new positions to add that position in due to the great need, and a lot of that comes through the pandemic era and a lot of people at home. But the technology continues to change and evolve. I just want to make sure that Rapid City is a safe place for children, and a lot of that activity begins online. So parents, you do need to be vigilant about who's trying to reach out to your children and what they're seeing and doing, and just know that for those who are using technology, and not even just technology, whether you're on the grid or off the grid, if you're preying upon children, we are going to come after you. So I'm pretty serious about that. So to only make those exceptions when we have other great needs all across the board, but we need to evaluate everything this year to make sure that we have all the right people in the right spots moving forward. That gets back to what I said I would talk about for 2023. One of the positions authorized is a chief of staff position. That essentially, we might change the title, might be a chief operating position. I haven't quite decided, but that person will help the mayor's office run the day-to-day operations of the city. There's a lot of things going on in the city, and we need somebody who can help find those efficiencies to help us streamline everything, but also provide great leadership, great day-to-day leadership for the city. That was authorized last year. I do plan to continue with that. But all other positions, when they become open, it's a habit of ours, and it should be a habit of ours to evaluate whether we need to even fill that position in the first place, or if it could be dispersed among the rest of the talent that we have.
For clarification, I remember last year one of the big debates was around an environmental coordinator position. Is that one that would not be authorized?
Sustainability coordinator, I haven't hired for that yet. That's the thing where I want to evaluate the scope of the program before we get into what that position is going to do and who will do that. So we did have conversations on that. I'm not required to fill the position. I do look at a lot of things like the resiliency of Rapid City. How can we withstand things that might be coming our way? How do we make sure that we are stewarding things well? But the big question is that can that be absorbed with our current staff, or do we need to add the position? So those will be conversations that we will have. I haven't really made any decisions, yes or no on that, because quite frankly, I'm too new to the position and had a budget to fill. So, but it'll be something we evaluate as we do all positions.
Awesome. You talked a lot about prioritizing high volume retail. What
Yeah.
kinds of concrete objectives do you have in mind to do that?
So when we are partnering with economic development, and a lot of times someone will look to do business in Rapid City and they want to know, what spots do you have available? They want to know, do you have incentive programs? They want to know that you're wanted. Do you have the market data to support that we would do well here? Do you have the workforce? Do you have the housing that those workforce will live in? All of it's interconnected. So for starters, it's letting them know we want you. We have 3.8 million visitors that came here last year. So we know that not just the locals can spend money here, but we also know that our visitor industry, as well as the region. So we serve in our metro areas over 150,000 people, 153,000, probably higher than that, but that's what we actually have numbers for. Then you add in the fact that in the trade area is much larger than that because we're the only metro area for a long ways away. You start adding that population in, that really supports the desire for high volume retail. So part of that is getting that message out. Part of it is, we're competing for these spaces with other entities. So I'm letting them know Rapid City wants to talk to you. And that's important. But a lot of that, we have grocery store deserts. That's a concern to make sure that we're putting those strategically in places. I will tell you, I had one conversation with a grocer who wanted to do something central in Rapid City. I don't want to say the name. And what I was able to do is have a conversation with them. There was a connection that was made, and they were very serious about property. They were having a hard time. But what I knew was there's this other person who had this other development they were doing that actually might be well, so I connected the dots. And so they've had a conversation about what if this was part of that development, and it would actually help fill a need. So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about.
You mentioned that we are very reliant on sales tax. How do we safeguard against sales tax uncertainty, especially coming in a post-pandemic era?
Well, and inflation really takes its toll because when people have less money to spend, that's significant. The internet also, I make a point, we won a case, I think Marty Jackley several years ago, the Attorney General, with Wayfair. I remember as the Wayfair case went up to the Supreme Court, we were able to get internet sales. That was big. But the thing is, if you live slightly out of town, if you live in Blackhawk and you buy something, we may not, on the internet, Rapid City, you didn't go to Rapid City for that. Now we did lose income there. So we want to make sure that shopping experience, not only for locals, but for tourists and everybody else, is significant. So how do we safeguard? Well, for starters, we need to elect really great and smart people at all levels of government who know to kind of stay out of the way of some things. I think that's important. Two, for the city's sake, we have to look at other revenue sources. And that includes things like user fees, and that meaning some of our general fund that comes from sales tax helps offset, potentially could help offset user fees in other areas. So we need to look at an evaluation across the board to say what fees do we have that should be appropriate to them so that the taxpayers aren't subsidizing user fees. And that's going to be another area we will look at.
Talking about fees again, you mentioned being more efficient in city government, and you also mentioned that you and Mr. Ainsley had shaved quite a bit of money off of this budget. Can you talk a little bit about the areas that you saved and your ideas for being more efficient going forward?
Well, we had a project that Pennington County wanted to do that was going to cost us several $million. Well, actually, probably $9 million at the end of the day. And I pushed back on it a little bit and said, can we rethink this? Instead, we're going to put $500,000 towards an adjustment on that. I just told them we couldn't afford to do that. And it's a partnership that I want to continue. Thankfully, they're very receptive and they're working with us on that. So that means you have those conversations, says, that's great, I understand your need. Here's our actual reality. So can we work together to do something else? And you can see in here, we have great partnerships with the county. So in many ways, we're partnering and we're adding to our partnerships, but there are other ways that plans that they may have had that we have said, not so fast. And quite frankly, they're still looking at their strategy as well. So that honestly, one move saved us millions for now. And we will continue to look at all of those options. The other one is obviously when you say no to a lot of positions, our greatest investment in the budget is personnel. It's our best investment too, but it's our greatest one. And when you say no to positions, and some of these I don't doubt are needed, that is a savings for now. But there's always a cost to everything. Great economist Thomas Sowell, I say this quote all the time, says there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So if you don't fill those positions, it means certain things aren't happening, or certain services may not be done in a timely manner, whatever the case may be. I understand that. But we need to evaluate our staffing levels and our staffing structure to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. That'll be a big objective of ours this next year.
You've only been in office about 6 weeks, so
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of the things in this budget are also overlay from Mayor Allender. Can you talk a little bit about kind of those overlap areas, maybe things that wouldn't have been in your budget?
Yeah, a lot of it boils down to the department budgets, which is why they're here, because one thing I couldn't do was necessarily get into the nooks and crannies of every department. Not that we have great people that'll do that. And those were conversations had with the mayor. We know that the initial budget, there's always the initial request, and it's a really high number. And over the course of a year of this budget season, that number, which didn't start with me, dwindles. And I'm sure the mayor said, hey, no, we're only going to do this, and made adjustments behind the scenes with these guys before I ever got on board. And then I come in and I still made, other decisions, both adding and taking out of the budget that were there in the first place. For example, one of the things I did, the city park ranger, has been an idea I've been talking about for quite some time. Written about it in op-eds in your paper, probably, a year ago or whatever, I don't know. But it was budgeted to be a larger program, and I shrunk it down to the 4. But we had, almost probably double that amount initially. So I did shrink that down. So let's start small, see how it goes, and we'll grow it from there. So those are the adjustments that the mayor heard me and put that in the budget. Mayor Allender did. And when I came on, I'm like, yes, that's good. Let's shrink that down just a little bit more. Those are the kind of adjustments that were made. I appreciate Mayor Allender, taking the initial ball, and he pitched most of the game, and I had to come in and close it out. So.
I'm not sure who this question is for, maybe Ms. Fisher. When we talk about affordable housing being a priority with the Vision Fund, one of the things that we hear a lot is issues with zoning. How are we enticing people to come, developers to come and really invest in affordable housing in Rapid City?
Thank you for the question. So we have taken great steps to diversify areas that do support zoning. We've done that through our urban commercial district, which is in our downtown core. Many young people that are moving to our city want to live in a vibrant area, and they want to do so downtown. Prior to that, you couldn't do an apartment in the downtown area. It was exclusively commercial with some residential on top. That has changed in areas. Also, there's more of a mix of uses. You may recall that recently there was a rezone request that was brought forward to rezone some property across from Menards. It's in an industrial area, but there's a need for affordable housing. There's a workforce that could live there and provide services to those businesses. And so in working with council, we supported that. And then through a tool called a plan development, it allows us to get creative to ensure that those that are going to occupy the structure have got safeguards and other measures in place so that their quality of life is being secured as well.
Excellent, thank you. Perhaps for Mr. Tech, a big portion of the expenditures in this budget, I think around 27%, are slated for public works, stormwater, wastewater. What are kind of the big priorities for your department?
For the year 2024, there aren't any new initiatives. Certainly, we're carrying on the work that we've done for decades, really, as far as public service and stormwater, wastewater, water, and solid waste. Certainly, inflation has taken a big hit to all of our budgets. Therefore, a lot of the increase in large dollar amounts are attributed to that. As I said, we're not going to be doing any new initiatives. However, we're going to provide the same good level of service that we've always provided.
Excellent. I think that's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Hi, David Scott, KNBN. We did talked a little bit about kind of homelessness and how your views on that too. Budget-wise, how does that look to you? Does that look more towards like enforcement, or are we looking to, as you said, the Cornerstone mission is the only mission in town? Are we looking to somehow like expand services that are available to people who are like down on their luck suffering from homelessness? Is it enforcement? And also part into the economic development, are we looking at enticing maybe more food services too to close up some of the food deserts that are in Rapid City?
Great questions. I will tell you this, two things can be true at the same time, and I know that's weird to our world today. So you can both enforce the law, meaning you're not allowed to sleep on the streets, and have services available for those in need. So this budget, we made significant investments. I'll list off the proposals here. And these are things, the city is not required to do any of this. We offsetted our community investments with what we call undesignated funds, meaning if the council wishes to make cuts to anything, this is where they will likely start. And we have a significant amount of money, crisis services, over $2.1 million. So we have the CARE Campus at 1.3 million, Cornerstone at 200,000, Journey On contract that we have, 360,000, Volunteers of America do a lot of case work at 75,000. We also have Lifeways, which does drug treatment programs for kids, students at 60,000, and Working Against Violence, which is an emergency shelter, but only for those in situations of domestic violence and assault. Those are some ongoing things that we've done. This is not anything new. This is a continuation of what Mayor Allender had in. I did put more emphasis on Cornerstone because I think there needs to be some education in the community. Because the challenge is everybody wants to start a new shelter because they don't like the ones that are already there. But there's only so much resources in the community to go after these challenges. So if you start dividing the limited resources up among dozens of organizations that are serving the same group of people, nobody gets helped. You can't be everything to everyone. So you have to start to say, well, who's doing it and doing it well? And one of the measures I use is that if an organization did not exist, would the community miss them? And I promise you, if the Cornerstone did not exist, we would miss them. So one of the things they have a challenge with is staffing. They are understaffed and under-resourced because of this new kind of wave of a new nonprofit propping up all the time. Very good, very well intended. Might fill a niche or a gap, but the big rocks of shelter, emergency shelter, they will continue to provide that. They have been at points where they wondered if they could even afford to do that anymore. That was a challenge. And if that's the case, that's a different conversation for the city too. But I talked to them, talked to the leadership there. They're committed to doing that. This will help them. The other thing I hope it does is it signals to donors in the community about if the city believes that this is a good investment, perhaps it's a good investment for us as well. My challenge to the community is to support the Cornerstone Rescue Mission. They're doing good work because, again, they are the only shelter. That's significant. And they are the only place that provides multiple meals a day, every day of the year, every day of the week. You can't deny that. Everybody else is hit here and there and everywhere, and all very well and good. The other thing the Cornerstone does is they bring a level of accountability. They actually care enough to help people level up and take the next step in their lives if that's what they wish to do. Your other question was about food deserts? Is that what?
Yeah, that's actually kind of along the lines of economic development too, because we talked about affordable housing, getting sources of food for like low-income neighborhoods, and getting, I think I'd like to actually add on to that too. Is there anything in the economic development to get affordable childcare into Rapid City?
That's a great, well, the childcare thing is an ongoing challenge that we have all over the place. I will tell you, first of all, one of the changes we made in the budget is we moved economic development from a community investment, put it in the mayor's office budget. It's the same amount, $250,000, but that's our partnership. We use Elevate to serve as a lot of those functions, because if we didn't have Elevate, we'd likely have staff of our own doing that. And that is a challenge they're working on as well. There's not much the city can do other than zoning and all of that. I don't believe it's the city's responsibility to provide those services. we can talk about the needs for those services. And when a daycare or childcare facility wants to come in and wants to open up, we will do everything we can to help them out. We certainly will point out those needs. We also don't provide, food for everybody. But when someone wants to provide a grocery store in a needed area or whatever, we will do our best to make sure that that process is clean and smooth and according to our ordinances and according to the needs that we have in the community. So a lot of this is about philosophical stuff about what the government's role is and what it isn't. So those needs, I absolutely think they're great needs. And there are organizations like Feeding South Dakota and others that are doing, a lot of work in terms of providing food, and the school district is a huge part of that component. The city government's not going to be in the business of providing shelters or feeding centers. There are others that are doing a great job. Why would we reinvent the wheel? That would not be wise. Instead, we're saying who's doing it well, and we're partnering with them. That we do what we do, which is provide essential services to the city of Rapid City. That's what these leaders behind me represent. That's what we do. We will talk about those needs. We will work on those needs, but we don't have any intention to try to say who's doing this and can we do it better. We believe the city government's going to stay in our lane, but we are going to talk about the challenges in our community because it does greatly impact us.
And I think, so we talked about too how much sales tax is a big part of this budget too, and we could talk about tourist dollars. Obviously, those are very important to the state of Rapid City and the state of South Dakota. Rapid City is growing as a city. What are some of the things that would be in this budget to sort of maintain and I suppose the word encourage that growth?
Well, I don't think we have to encourage any growth, by the way. Our job is not to encourage growth. Our job is to create the conditions for growth.
Or incentivize, I think would be the better
So
word.
one of the things I think we can do is we need better proactive development. Right now when we have a major development, and there's a lot of things in the works, when we have a major development coming in, the developers pay the cost of infrastructure. And that's not just your street, but that's water, that's your sewer, there's a lot that goes to that. So one of the things we've talked about, and we've been pretty open about this, about more proactive development, that what if the city had the funds to say, grow this direction or grow in this area, and we put the infrastructure in there, and then we recoup those fees when somebody, taps into the water line or buys or develops a piece of property, they're assessed and it pays back to the city into a revolving fund that they can use for the next project. There's appetite with the staff and there's appetite with the council for that. Just need money to do that because you have to have seed money. So those are the kind of conversations we're going to have. That's part of why I planted the seed last night, and I've talked about this many times, of exploring our Vision Fund allocation. Vision Fund has been wonderful. We have no desire to end quality of life projects. We do a lot. But one thing I think we have to do is prioritize that funding. And can we prioritize it in such a way that it allows for these kind of possibilities, such as proactive development, and also us really being able to present great quality of life projects for the community.
And then I'd just like to ask really quick about so you talked about the park ranger position as something that you've thought of for a long time. What does that look like? So what does that job entail?
Well, this, how I envision it, by the way, these details have to be worked out because I don't want to put too much time on every detail unless it's approved. But I will say the concept is that they are a uniformed code enforcement officer in our parks. And it's more than that though, because they would have citation authority. If you have an off-leash dog or you have vandalism, or if you're doing something you shouldn't be doing within the park system, they would have the ability to cite you for that. And all of that's about keeping that space, safe for all. That's 1,700 acres of park space. They would also be a deterrent to hopefully activity that we don't want in our parks, such as assaults, such as drug use, such as camping. Those are things we don't want to do. They will not be police officers, so they will have a direct line to law enforcement if anything dangerous or something that needs attention is brought up. They'll be eyes and ears as well. So that will serve a great factor as well. But I think there's a fun part of this. Think about I kind of envision like a game fish and parks ranger, and I always think they have a great job. Yes, if you don't have a fishing license, they're going to get you. but they're also doing caretaking of wildlife. They know the trails, they know the systems that they work in better than anybody. They have an educational component to it. They love being in the outdoors, that sort of thing, and they're a caretaker of the space. And I look at this as that as well. There's a positive component to this that I think those who are hired for this and that apply for this are going to be people who are very passionate about our park space and about safety. And I think that's the positive thing. That'll be the thing that gets them up every day and ready to go. And there will be the enforcement arm of this as well. So I see it as kind of quasi in there. That's why it's a relationship between the Parks Department, the Police Department, as well as the community development with code enforcement. So when we're doing something different, we're trying something different. And we're going to figure some things out as we go, I'm certain. But other communities have done this. This is not an original idea. In fact, there was a magazine called The Municipal. The August edition had Modesto, California's 18-month pilot program for a park ranger. You'd have thought I wrote the article with the things we were talking about. And so it was forwarded to me. And I thought, well, how about that? That's pretty impressive. So this is really about targeting behavior and making sure that it is safe for everybody in our parks. I get excited about what that could be. I think it's going to be a dream job for some people.
All right, that's everything I have. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Any other questions for me or any of? Craig, would you mind coming up here and talking a little bit about the economic impact of the monument? Sure. That we had a study last night while you're here. We had a study presented by a third party last night about the addition of the arena and what that has done and whether it has been a good investment for Rapid City. I was proud to support it, even more proud now that we got the data. I thought I'd give you an opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not the expert that conducted the study. It was a third-party group. We stayed out of their way and let them do it. But it was kind of an interesting study. A study like this really helps us evaluate where we're going. And first of all, how do we have our report card when it comes to the economic impact that we bring to the city? But then how do we take that information and how does that affect our bookings in the future and all that? So the study showed a very robust 131 million total economic impact for the year 2022, which is exactly 10 years since the last study was done. And it showed an incredible amount of growth. Obviously, we built a new arena, so it should show an incredible amount of growth. But it showed us that not only are we on track, but how we compare with other markets similar to ours and everything that we're very, very robust in that area. So I think it's a great tool for us to measure by. I'm guessing that, the other measuring sticks that we have, I have to make my budget and make money. So we have a measuring stick on that. How well we do with the community involvement and the community events that we do, we can measure that. But economic impact, we almost have to have a study done. So I'm hoping to do it every 5 years instead of every 10 years in the future. Any questions about that? Thanks for the opportunity.
I thought the cool part of that story last night was they looked at data for people who lived outside of Pennington County. So it wasn't just, we know it's strong here locally, but it really helped prove it. $131 million annual impact to the city in the area. That's for businesses. $5 million impact to our revenue. So I think that was great as well. So Darsha.
Back again, I
Yep.
apologize.
Triggered you.
Question for Chiefs Hedrick and Culberson. We're looking at public safety budgets. Where is the greatest need, the greatest focus in your department? Is it hiring? Is it retention? Kind of what's the priority area?
Awesome. Thank you for the question. For us, here in Rapid City, we fell into a couple nationwide trends that we've seen over the last couple years. One of those has been hiring and retention of law enforcement officers. Across the country, that's been a struggle. This budget year, we went before our council and the mayor and asked to put funding towards keeping good folks at our department. And so far, that has been a very good practice. We've taken some funding, put it directly towards that, making sure they have wellness options available, keeping good people in the position. But that also does extend into the 2024 budget. Still kind of a trial period with all of that to see what's going well, what we can look into further. But yeah, our wages for our employees is a high priority as well, making sure we have competitive wages to bring in and retain good folks, as well as having wellness practices in place.
When you have officers that leave your department, what's kind of the number one or the greatest reason that they're citing for leaving?
Over the last couple of years, we've analyzed that and studied it, and typically it was pretty common to have a 2 or 3 year employee leave to go work law enforcement somewhere else, or to move because of a family situation. Very common. But in the 2020 and 2021 timeframe, we had very long-term tenured employees, 14, 13, 12 years on, deciding to just completely go do something else. There are other jobs that are, you have to deal with less negativity, the hours are better, that sort of thing. And so it really caused us to evaluate and reach out to our employees and figure out what was important to them. Things that were important to me 21 years ago when I started, they're not as important to our newer folks. Overtime, for example. We used to have this huge line of folks waiting in line just to sign up for overtime shifts. You had to get up at like 6:30 and stand in this line that wrapped all the way around the hallway. And now we can hardly force folks to take an overtime shift. Their time off is, for this younger group of employees, is more important to them. And making sure that they are able to balance that work life is very important to them. And perhaps that's probably a better way of doing business, maybe. So it's caused us to adjust and take a look at what we're doing and why, and also bring some of the newer folks to the table to help us problem solve.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief Edrick.
Thank you.
Question from Mr. Dame. We're moving into this major airport project. Can you kind of maybe give us a status on where we're at with it?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, and good morning. So right now, as we're moving, there is a considerable amount of capital into the airport's budget. And we're moving towards Project 1, Phase 1. Currently, we did bid the project, which did come in over budget. We had one bidder. So we've been working with, we have more ability when you have a single bidder to be able to negotiate with the contractor that put in that bid. So we're working with our consultants to reduce some portions of the building, as well as look at some value engineering type options here before we move ahead on awarding a grant. We'll also have the capability as we move forward in VEing the project out with the contractor to both sides be able to potentially walk away if we can't get to an agreement on where we need to for Project 1, Phase 1. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Obviously, we've talked in the past about the terminal project being 3 major projects, but as we look for funding and wait on announcements from the Federal Aviation Administration for funding allotments, that could break the project, a single project, into smaller phases. And so that's what we're doing right now, is we've broken Project 1 into additional phases. We're looking at Project 1, Phase 1. We've got approximately $25 million in federal funding right now that is pretty well committed towards the project, and we're working to negotiate that contract out with our lone bidder. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks here, we should be able to see potentially an ability to be able to move forward on that project, or we're going to have to reevaluate for next year in terms of where we're at. So we're getting into the last days of the federal program here and working through that. So hopefully more updates to come.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Question for Mayor Solomon. One of the positions that was discussed last year was a grant writer, someone who would, try to get those grants for the city. Is that still something that we're going to be working on, that we see a need for?
We hired her.
We did?
Jamie Tennis, the former director of the
sorry.
United Way. Well, I don't know if
Not enough coffee this morning.
I don't know if
apologize.
we did a parade for it or anything, but she's pretty great, and I know she's hard at work. I think I didn't get a chance to see it, but I believe I have an email today just of the slew of grants she's going after and stuff that we have to evaluate. The big thing with grants is to make sure that we don't get tied into things that we don't necessarily want to get tied into. But no, we've already filled that position.
Thank you. I apologize.
No, that's all right.
Chief Culberson, The same question I asked Mr. Hedrick. I jumped right ahead. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, and that's just fine. I think Don articulated it very well. Fire service is having many of the same issues. We were insulated for many years in not having the recruitment problem, where we would have the same 400 people standing in line to take our test. So last year we had about 120, which was, I think, a huge success for us through our recruitment campaign. But as an overall, as the fire service and public safety as a whole, we're struggling with the recruitment. Many reasons why. COVID didn't help much, as the communities watched us be on the front lines and not have an opportunity to say no. We have to still respond. But going to some of our priorities about, if you look at our budget, our number one big piece is personnel. Most of our budget dollars go towards personnel, and we need to continue to invest in those. All these directors sitting behind me are feeling the same pinch with the growth of this community. Fire department's a little different that we have in the ambulance service, where we have our units are in locations in their small communities throughout the city. And as that city continues to grow outward, the outward sprawl, and put more of those developments in those areas, it puts a lot of pressure on us that we're not be able to provide the same level of service that this community's expected. So we're going to have to deal with that as we go along. We've been finding some new ways of providing the service, especially on the ambulance side of that, with some peak load ambulances and that nature. Opening up a new fire station would be in a huge goal that I hope Mayor Solomon can help me do in the next few years. But that's the same. Public Works is having those issues and needs to add people to deal with the growth. So, like I said, Don did it the best. He did pretty much is translated directly to public safety, period, is having all those.
Can you talk a little bit about the mobile medic program, how that's going, and is that something you're looking to increase?
Yeah, I think our mobile medic program is doing extremely well for this community. When we initiated we attempted in 2013, then got it going in 16. It was meant to hopefully reduce the call volume on our department and reduce some of the costs. We'll have some data coming out very soon on that program on what it has saved the community. So I'm looking forward to that with our data specialist. But I think it's going very well. Yes, I would like to expand it. I think it's really focusing in on what we need to do. We have for years encouraged people to call 911, and now they do with great gusto for just about anything and everything. And we are the ones that are getting called for it, both police and fire. When our dispatch center gets a 911 call, somebody has to go. And it's pretty much left to law enforcement or us to pick up the pieces. So the mobile medics have done very well at curbing some of that. I think our data from last year and including this year show some of that. We had pretty much flat growth after 5+ years of astronomical type growth. This year our call volume's up about 0.7%. So I think it's in direct relation to that. And our cooperation with the co-responder program with law enforcement and Journey On have really taken a piece of that call volume away. I've said it before in some meetings and at the council meeting, we did 21,494 calls last year. A like-sized agency between 65 and 85,000 people that does fire department and transport, they're averaging between 7 and 10,000 calls. So we're busy here, and I'll throw it in that they do it with about 70 more people and 3 more stations. So, and their budget's much larger. So we're doing a very good job for our community, and I think the mobile medic's a big piece of that.
Thank you, Chief Culberson.
Yep.
My last question is for Ms. Davis. We're looking at $3.7 million in general funds to go towards the library, and I think there's a misconception that in the digital age, why are we funding a library? Can you talk about why our library is such an incredible resource in the city?
Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I've worked in public libraries for a long time, and in the early 1990s, there was this thing called the internet that started developing, and people said, oh, we can go online and do all this cool stuff. We'll never need libraries. We got busier. People needed help navigating that information. Same things happened when Google and Amazon came on. You know, we can Google anything, we don't need the library anymore. We can get all our books and resources from Amazon, we don't need the library anymore. Why then do we keep getting busier and busier? So yes, and you're right about the electronic resources, absolutely. Our electronic resources are by far the most popular resources, but what we found is the younger generations have expressed an interest in print materials. It's almost as though that's their opportunity to unplug from the technology. But that said, we try to balance those things and have a good variety of print as well as support the electronic. Interestingly, the electronic books, the e-books and e-resources are much more expensive than their print options. Seems counterintuitive, but it's, you know, the inbuilt costs, including platforms for providing them, licensing structures, copyright structures, all of that plays into it, and that's what adds into those costs.
It looks like one of your big projects is the Bookmobile. Can you talk about that?
Yes, the library has not had a bookmobile since, I believe, the mid-1980s. Interestingly, the reason they stopped the bookmobile at that time was because of high fuel costs. So we're now going for a hybrid option, and it has been delayed somewhat. We're expecting delivery now sometime in January, and we'll kick the service off early in the start of the year. It is, to our minds, the most cost-effective and flexible option for providing library services throughout the community. So rather than being tied down to a bricks and mortar structure somewhere in the community that may not meet the growth needs of the neighborhoods, we've got the library on wheels, or we will have the library on wheels, and we can take it wherever we need.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's all my questions for real this time.
Thank you.
Is it safe to say that the library mobile is going to bring the 80s back?
We can go retro.
I listen to vinyl too, you know. Anyways, David, you got it?
I got a couple,
You got
I
more?
got a
All
couple
right.
more for you. Actually, one thing that jumped out at me was the public transportation, some of the public transportation investment. Can you talk a little bit about what that's going to look like?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, certainly our rapid transit system is growing. For 2024, we did include funding to start our bus replacement program. It's been a number of years since we've done really anything with our fleet of buses. So the big initiative now is to get more fuel efficient, updated buses to try to make sure our fleet isn't a big hit or a big drain on the budget at a 10-year interval. So that's the largest initiative. Certainly we're continuously evaluating routes, but we don't have any plans in place for the 2024 to create or substantially change any existing routes.
All right, and is that mostly just kind of modernizing the bus fleet that we have, or are we looking at expanding it as well?
Certainly just replacement. A lot of those buses that we have in our fleet are either 2013 model year or 2016 model year. So we've taken good care of them and they've served us well, but it's time to update but not expand the fleet at this moment.
All right, and then my next question actually is for Chief Culverson, but Police Department, please feel free to answer this one as well too. This answers to retention. I noticed one of the top items on the line budget was health and wellness and mental health programs for personnel. Can you want to talk a little bit about what you're looking for there?
Sure, I appreciate that. And retention's the big piece for us because training a new firefighter, EMS provider is extremely expensive and way expensive. And so we're going to invest heavily in our personnel. We're kind of following the lead of the police department, which you can probably talk about it a little better on some of their health and wellness initiatives and providing that to our employees. What we've found over the course of time is mental health is a bigger problem than we anticipated. When I first started back really long time ago. We'll just leave it at that. It wasn't even thought about. Mental health wasn't. We didn't talk about it much unless there was a major incident. Well, now we know that wasn't a good idea. Divorce rates were high, suicide rates are high with public safety professionals. So we're really going to invest heavily in that. We have been over the course of time, but we're going to start taking some other avenues, especially with our wellness coordinator, like the police department's been doing. We're going to invest in some of that. Which he'll be able to answer that.
Ditto, thank you.
Yeah.
Just kidding. The fire chief said it well. And on top of all of the issues that plague first responders, the trauma that they experience from seeing some very terrible things, it can build up and it can weigh on folks. So we got to make sure we have outlets for them to stay healthy. Healthy first responders engaged with the public in a better way. It's good for everybody. And really for us, a key component has been access to mental health services. And whether that's services within our building through a doctor that we've employed over the years, or access outside of our building, having the ability to reach out to a therapist to connect up for services that could be provided. Just making sure that our folks are aware that those exist. Another key component, I believe, is our peer support system, where we've trained up folks from all different levels of the department to recognize when somebody is struggling, or recognize some of those calls that can create trauma, and then reaching out. I don't have people lined up outside of my door waiting to talk about the issues that they're facing or that they're having a tough day. It just doesn't happen, but they're more apt to talk to a peer about issues like that, more apt to engage with a peer. So really, our peer support system, they're not doctors or psychologists or therapists, but they're trained to recognize when an issue exists and then help the employee navigate that to get connected with resources that are needed. I know this program has saved careers, and it's something that we're going to continue to invest in as well.
Okay. That's everything that I have. Thank you.
Well, we have reached the end of our hour. Thank you for showing up today and getting the information out to the public. Obviously, we had the public meeting last night that's available to be viewed by everybody if they want to get to know more about the budget. We will have information posted on our website for the public with regards to the budget. Right now, it's just a presentation. It will go into the hands of the City Council. The City Council is planning to have a special budget hearing next Monday evening at 5:30 p.m. That will be their meeting. It will be available for them to answer questions, and they'll have to get a couple of readings done before the end of September, and then we will be locked in for the next year. So with that, thank you all again. Thanks for everybody tuning in, all three of you. We appreciate it, and so God bless and take care.